Hello everyone, and welcome to day 51 of our blogs on John's Gospel, continuing our theme today of seeing beauty, which of course is rather poignant today, as today is Armistice Day, marking the formal end of the First World War as the Allies signed the ceasefire agreement with Nazi Germany in France at 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month. In Latin, armistice means to stand still, and we mark this with the 2-minute silence which we've just done. And we've done that since 1919, when King George V issued a proclamation stating, "All locomotion shall cease, so that in perfect stillness the thoughts of everyone may be focused on the reverent remembrance of the glorious dead." Although ceremonies have been affected by the COVID pandemic this year, we should still share the encouragement of remembrance, maybe in a similar way to our support for the NHS earlier in the year, as well as the traditional respectful period of quiet reflection for those killed in both world wars and other conflicts since. The bright red poppy is worn as it grew in battle-scarred fields, made famous in the poem Flanders Field. It's a resilient flower that flourished despite those fields being ravaged by the conflict of war. Even in the ravages of war, there is still the beauty of hope. The World War I poet, however, Wilfred Owen, was a serving soldier who was killed in action. His haunting poems, Dulci et Decorum Est and The Anthem for Doomed Youth, dispelled the traditional notion that it was a glorious and noble thing to die for one's country in battle. He had seen first-hand in the trenches the pain, the blood, the suffering and the death. He was not a general or a politician sending thousands into battle for a few feet of mud. He was, as later described, one of the lions led by donkeys. Hope and beauty can even emerge from war, and you may recall my admiration expressed in my earlier blog from VE Day back in June for the railway man Eric Lomax, and the beauty of his forgiveness and subsequent friendship with his wartime Japanese interrogator. Today's linked Bible passages are Psalms 105 and 106, often paired and compared together. They both emphasise the faithfulness of God. They are long psalms, so I won't read them out for you now, but take time with them and see what you can work out what they're saying. They focus very much on the ongoing covenant of God making it with his chosen people Israel, and how well they do in obeying that word. It encourages us in turn to give thanks to God, to call upon his name, to make known his deeds among all people, and to worship and glorify his holy name. Both these psalms, believed to be written by David, have an inherent beauty in their wording, in their structure, and in their meaning, but also reveal two sides of the relationship between God and his people over a long period of time. Psalm 105 sings a song of power and faithfulness, whereas Psalm 106 tells a slightly sadder story of repeated failure, many times caused by rebellion on the part of God's chosen people. David recounted the amazing deeds that God had done in the sight of all peoples, and encouraged all who witnessed this to do the same. God's people should tell of all his wondrous works. Indeed, one of the many points Jesus makes both in the miracle stories and in the parables is that the kingdom of God is close at hand. Praising God in our worship, whether sung, spoken, in church, out of church, elsewhere, it matters not. The beautiful thing is that in our worship, we give God the power and the glory, and that praise for all he does and has done for us, to remember the marvellous works he has done. So how is your collective memory? Do we honour God, or do we sometimes dishonour him if we forget those great works, forget the gospel teachings, act in an unkind manner, criticise unduly, speak harsh words, become complacent in our faith? We will drift into forgetfulness, a kind of spiritual amnesia, if we do not proactively remember God's teachings. It is our duty and our joy, and God will rejoice with us. The Psalms detail God's care for his people in exile and on their arrival in the Promised Land. God's faith in Israel, in spite of all their faults and transgressions, much like us, was based on the beautiful fulfilment of his holy promises. He has bound himself to all people through his covenant, and he makes it holy and beautiful. The emphasis throughout the Psalms is on God's goodness, his kept promises, and his eternal protection. he is beautifully true to his word. This is also seen in Psalm 106, the darker counterpart of its predecessor, a shadow cast by human will against the light of God. The writer Alexander Maclaren said, "The key to Psalm 105 is to remember God's mighty deeds. Psalm 106 shows that we then forgot those mighty deeds. Psalm 105 shows the praise through God's gift and blessings to Israel. Psalm 106, in turn, gives praise through God's great mercy to an often unreceptive people. There is great beauty in both, as contrasts often provide. Israel's history, our history, is a story of God's mercy and forgiveness, and there is so much beauty in this, and in our remembrance today. May we never lose that memory, our ability to forgive and be kind, to reflect, to learn, and to give thanks for both what has gone before and the great mercies to come. Have a good day, everyone. God bless. Bye for now.